The first split is about to wrap up, and Dignitas has been having some struggles over the past couple of months, and now they have a head coach come in. So now I'm sitting down with the North American General Manager, Mylixia, as well as their new coach, Rico, to discuss sort of the general, like, what's been going on with Dignitas and now the general state of Dignitas. So first off, getting into it, probably Mylixia, question for you is, at the end of last year, we started to see teams announce their rosters and all that kind of thing. We saw, Team Liquid get high-profile person like Piglet, and TIP get Impact, and we saw a lot of people importing, for lack of a better word, these really strong and famous names in Korea. Whereas Dignitas showed up with its roster, and I feel like a lot of the community sentiment was like, where did this come from? So I'd love to get a sense for just how the formation of that roster began, because I think a lot of people felt as though it seemed kind of rushed or last minute or something along those lines.
So esports is hard, right? The perception that everything goes so clearly and we have a clear answer right away is not necessarily true at the time that it's happening. So hindsight is always 2020. At the time, we were looking at Korea because we had a coach there who was working with us remotely. And the management had decided that we wanted to allow the players to kind of pick the rosters. The existing players, particularly Crumbs at the time, had a lot of roster control. And the remote coach in Korea told us, there's these two guys, they're incredible. A lot of people don't know about them. And if you try them out, you pick them, it's going to be really good. We had seen in the past that there was a lot of problems, kind of importing one Korean because you'd have a language barrier at that point. We figured that if we got two, we would fix that problem. They'd be able to communicate between themselves, and then we'd be able to bring in translators to kind of mind the language gap. And in practice, that worked out pretty well.
Okay.
So that's sort of the thinking behind it.
Nice. And then we immediately saw almost immediately, we saw the departure of Crumbs from the team. And that was kind of a fan favorite. He'd been on the analyst desk and all that kind of thing. And then you guys switch over to Cloud for tryouts and that kind of thing. So what brought about the Crumbs scenario? What was happening behind the scenes there?
I think just to get real with everything that happened there, the problem with Dignitas from a managerial perspective is that we did not release an immediate PR statement from our end to kind of explain, here's what's going on as far as we're concerned. And we allowed the community impact to just be on Crumbs' video that came out, which was pretty depressing, honestly. I think that there was another side of that, and that the fact of the matter is that the Crumbs have been playing for a long time. And when a player has been playing for that long, they have a very good idea of how they want to play the game. And that idea worked for Dignitas, which is kind of like a passive style of hanging back and allowing plays to happen. And once the enemy team makes a mistake, you capitalize on that. And that's very effective. It's a good play style, but Dignitas, in their own little meta, was moving towards more of an aggressive play style. Particularly Kiwi Kid and Core JJ coming in was a very aggressive bot lane, and that style increasingly conflicted with how Crumbs wanted to play the game. So that created an internal struggle and eventually led to arguments within the team, which I think was kind of painted to Reddit and external media as, the team versus everybody. It was kind of the team versus Crumbs, which is really unfortunate. He was one of the people that got me into esports. I think at his core, he's a truly good guy, and I want him to succeed. I think that he made the correct decision in determining that the way that he envisioned the game was fundamentally different from the way that Dignitas wanted to progress. Yeah. And that caused a struggle that was enough to break it off.
So it seems very strange to me because you mentioned that Crumbs had so much control over the roster, and yet there ends up being this disconnect. Why do you think that is? I mean, if you guys were giving him you're empowering him to make these big decisions, why did it eventually lead to such a big disconnect?
Because that's a great question. I think that the ability to control the roster and then what actually happened was two different things. Yeah. So to give a player control over something and say you have authority over this, and then for them in practice to exercise that control is two different things. So what we saw was Crumbs was given captain, but then, to be completely transparent, management would have to step in and make decisions anyway. So particularly, I had to make a lot of decisions around how the roster ended up formulating, and I had a lot of control over that process. We had input from the players at that point that we took very seriously, but a decision still had to come directly from management. So Crumbs, in the end, it was very difficult to determine. We knew how good Core JJ and Gamsu were. We didn't know exactly what their play styles were because Korea was such a different meta from us. And honestly, it's probably a question for another time, but just understanding how crazy different Korea is from America, going all the way back in time and realizing how different it is, we would have thought about our infrastructure completely differently. I kind of digress a little bit, but the point is, at the time, the actual ability for Crumbs to make those decisions and what actually happened, execution came from management.
Yeah.
I think that nobody was expecting what Core JJ and Allen's synergy would be. And as a result, we got an aggressive bot lane. And at that time, we had done that secret boot camp in Korea, right? And that was that.
Secret.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was pretty
It was
good,
downplayed,
right? Like,
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people knew about it. It didn't hit Reddit. It didn't, we did pretty well, I think, in the kind of clandestine operation there. So, the team, once they got to Korea, realized as a whole, and we realized as a whole simultaneously, that Korea plays a lot different, obvious, right? But that we're going to have to play a lot different, integrating two Koreans in order to be competitive. So, Crumbs at the time may not have even realized his own play style was as such and what he wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And we had only really begun to define that once we came back from Korea, and that puts us in late January. So already we kind of like we weren't able to see that disconnect until about the beginning of the split, which is why, and then it happened actually from that point very quickly that Crumbs stepped down because he identified that.
Yeah.
So the path, that's why I meant from the first statement, esports is kind of hard, is the path upwards to that moment was not obvious.
Right. So what is the story behind the Korean coach that you guys were using and maybe his current status with the team? Because he said that he was working remotely or whatever. I feel like there was a lot of discussion around the ineffectiveness of Monte Cristo when he was working remotely from Korea. So what was the thought process behind that and sort of the story?
I do want to have Rico's opinion on this, coach, also, officially. I'll say that we had decided on... Are we going to cover a coaching question a little bit later? So if I don't include that part?
No, you can talk about it. It's fine. However you want to take it.
Okay,
yeah.
because like in terms of if you want to know what the infrastructure of Dig was like and what our decision making was there.
Yeah.
Why
I mean,
we
specifically,
didn't have a
I
coach
find it.
initially.
Yeah.
Which is
a
high media issue.
Right, yeah, and it's fine, and we can transition to that from this topic. But I'm mostly like interested in what was going on. Like, was he just a temporary coach that you guys had that sort of was supposed to come in almost like a consultant, or what were the plans with him, and how did that all work?
So his role was integral in finding Core JJ and Gamsu, and so he came as sort of a package deal with them. In addition to that, he provided macro knowledge from a lot of the top Korean teams that no other coach I've ever seen has, unless you pay $400K a year for one. Mm-hmm. A lot of that knowledge filtered down into the way that we played, and we thought we had a serious advantage in combination with a really good OGN translator. We felt that we had a lot of control over how we understood the game compared to other North America teams, and I actually still think that's true. I think we still have that, and I think like what now suffers is execution. Another topic, but to answer the question more directly. Having him at first, the intention was we can have a remote support staff that is strong because we cannot bring in competent help in North America in a real time frame. Management, I'm telling you, I was looking like crazy for people the entire time, reviewing 200 applications. I was hiring for translators. I was hiring for competent coaches. It took me 40 personal interviews on Skype to find this guy. And I'm so glad I did. He's legitimately fantastic.
Is the Korean coach no longer part of the staff?
No, he still helps. Yeah.
Okay.
And do you want to comment on
Yeah, sure.
impact?
Enrico, you can sort of talk about him.
Most definitely, he's still part of the staff. He's doing a great job. Like, even if sometimes what we say kind of overlaps because we have, I think, the same vision of the game, it's always good that the players see that what I say is backed by what he says and vice versa. Because they were given the right tools to understand the macro strategy in the game, but when you only talk to your coach every 2 or 3 times a week before the games and not during scrims and everything, it gets in here and it gets out here right away because you get right back to your bad habits. And it's hard to focus on a message that you don't get repeated over and over and over. Like, it has to get in their blood. Until it's in their DNA, that will be fine, and that's what I'm starting to work on now.
Okay. And so, yeah, let's discuss a little bit. We had a lot of the guys show up with, or a lot of these other teams show up with coaches.
Yeah.
You guys had a guy over in Korea. I mean, were you said you were actively looking for somebody. Does that extend all the way back out to when you were actively looking as well for players?
About the October timeframe, we were still confident we had Skara. And that, I have extreme confidence in Skara as a coach. In my opinion, he is one of the best North America coaches. Having him, I was confident in having him secure a roster and get what he wanted. When we found out that he was not going to be a part of that, we were already behind. So at that point, we had to determine, what are we going to do? I honestly did not believe, and still do not believe, that management has any place choosing rosters for the most part, because I don't understand the game at a core level enough to select players that are competent. It should be someone that's in the scene that understands it, that's able to do that. So knowing that, I had to delegate to players because I had no staff to do it, right? So my only choice is to give that roster control to Crumbs and luckily to the Korean coach that we found.
Sure.
His ability to pick Gamsu and Core JJ was largely a trust-based issue at the time, because if we did, we took a risk because if we didn't have any other options.
Sure.
At that point.
And so when the coach, at what point did you start actively looking for a coach?
Basically immediately after we had determined that Skara was moving to CLG, was when we determined that. Yeah, it was when I started, and the amount of difficulty there is to bring in actual real talent to North America in the form of coaching is absurd.
So I mean, one of the moments that I think the community felt very critical of you was when I believe there was like a job posting for a coach, and there was a lot of requirements that you guys were looking for, right? And do you think that your expectations were too high, or that you had because I think one of the requirements was like multi-language and all that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're hiring for a position, always post insane job requirements. The people that aren't qualified will apply anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we got 200 applications. A lot of them were, hey, I've worked at a convenience store and I have managed a person, so I can coach League of Legends. I watched OGN 2 games. I can do it. So those guys are gonna apply anyway, right? The really qualified people are gonna see a position like that and they're gonna say, that's my position. I'm gonna apply for it. We had several people that applied that met all of those requirements, but for various reasons were not selected because of personality or other issues, which you'd probably know about from Reddit threads and things like that. The second issue is Reddit brought that to my attention immediately with the thread, and the top comment was requirements too high. I immediately edited them and said, hey, if you don't have an application that you think qualifies, but you still feel like you can apply for this position, go ahead and apply. So within 5 minutes of that article coming up, that was completely edited and fixed. We do listen, right? Like there's a general, and if I could just digress a little bit, there's a general perception that management in whatever organization is disconnected and doesn't know what it's doing. People make decisions in the best interest of their organization or themselves most of the time, right? There's no benefit to me saying, I want to destroy my own organization, or I want to bring this down in some way. I would never do that, right? I would say, here's my information. This is what I have. What's the best thing I can do? And there's a lot of people that look at that from the outside, and they say, well, you should have done this, and especially 2 months later, it's super easy to say that. But in practice, when you're on the ground floor, I think a lot of people don't realize how really freaking hard this is.
So along those lines, like you have a lot of people, as you just mentioned, that are very critical of you without having a lot of the information. I'd love to know, what areas do you think that you and the organization failed on, or if you can be critical of yourself for a moment?
Absolutely. I thought, have I been doing that? Or?
No. I know that's what I'm saying is it's your turn, right? Like with everybody else being so critical, right? You have all the information, right? So I'd love to know what there's
two sides of it, right? Yeah. On one side, there's the commentary coming in. On the other side, you have to take ownership of the mistakes you make. So looking back all the way to October, it feels like a constant stream of things in hindsight that we could have done as an organization to improve, starting with being preemptive in getting a coach. I think that's really obvious, and I think paying lip service to that is really no benefit at this point. It's really obvious that we messed up there. That was in large part because we didn't realize how seriously Riot was going to take the coaching issue. The communication there was nebulous. still, I think the big problem that Dignitas had, the key issue was that, and the issue I would personally apologize for, although I did fight this on a higher level, and I think it was kind of rejected, but that's a conversation that I can't really bring up. Transparency. We should have the entire way told people. I'm very, very big proponent of transparency. It's why I'm on this interview. It's why I'm talking to you right now. We're sorry. We know that we're making mistakes here. We're trying our best. We want to be a top team. We want to serve our community. We don't want to let our fans down. And we should, like, right from the Scara issue to all the way to now with the head coaching issue, we should have been completely transparent. There should have been articles being released. There should have been Odie doing more stuff. I know he went on Richard Lewis, which was very strong, but I think that way before that something should have happened. And I wanted to do a lot of videos and publications, and I was pulled back from doing that. And so, as an organization, I think the biggest issue we have is transparency, because you can own up. I can own up to our mistakes. We said, well, it should have been this. It should have been that. There was nothing malicious from Dignitas in trying to create a team that didn't work, right? So in that respect, why would I owe an apology to anyone for that reason? What I would owe an apology for is for miscommunication. I think that the biggest sin in esports or in any business you can do is not letting people know the truth and keeping it behind closed doors and hoping people will forget about it. That never works. You have to be transparent and truthful with your community, and for that, we're definitely sorry. We should have been more transparent. 100%.
It feels like there are maybe still some issues that you guys need to work on. I noticed that in my interview with Corey yesterday, he mentioned that like with Team Liquid, for instance, they're using a translator to help relay the information from the coaching and analytical staff over to Piglet or something like that. And it sounds as though at the moment there isn't one, based on what Corey was saying, that there isn't a translator in-house or at least available for you guys to work on this. Do you think that that's an issue? And maybe this is more a question for Rico.
I don't think it's an issue, to be honest, because Core JJ, for example, his English, in my opinion, is good enough to understand whatever we say to him. Yeah. I never had, like, for any discussion we had related to the game or related to anything else, never had any problem. Gamzu is shyer. His English is a bit like is not as good as Core JJ's, but he is an excellent player, and he knows the game like so well that there is actually not much that I need to tell him, because he knows what he has to do. And like even when we have these calls with the staff in Korea, most of the time the staff in Korea will just say, "Oh, and for Gamzu, well, I don't need to tell him. Yeah. He knows, yeah. He actually does." Yeah. So no, I really don't think that's an issue. And if I really have something I need to say, the translators are on Skype almost 24/7, and I can reach them like very, very easily. So no, I really don't think it's an issue.
We have 3 meetings a week with a translator on Skype, and then 2 personal player meetings, both with Core JJ and Gamsu, being like, "Are you okay? Is everything going on?" with a translator, just so they can talk to us.
Yeah. So from an organizational perspective and from a supporting the team, I mean, we'll talk in a little bit about the stuff that maybe they need to work on in game, but from an organizational and organizational support perspective, do you think that Dignitas has, quote unquote, finally like gotten to a balanced point where you guys can succeed?
From an infrastructural point, yes. Does that mean we will win games? No.
Right.
Do we have a head coach that is extremely competent and capable? Yes. Do we have a support staff to support that head coach in being competent and helping the team win games? Yes. And do we have the resources they need, financially or otherwise, to have them play the game at critical mass? Yeah, we have all that finally, right? Does that mean that we are going to be number 1? I don't know. Sometimes you can put everything in perspective and still not impact it. And the other issue is too that I think what Rico will bring up later is we still have a lot of issues. There's still a lot. It would be really silly to say we've brought this coach in. I've finally been able to step back to my managerial stuff and now everything's fine. No.
Yeah, my question was only more along like the infrastructure, right? Because I think a lot of people were very critical. Like that's almost like the foundation on which you can build like a successful team, right? So if you don't have the foundation,
And if I might just quickly add up some to that, like I personally wouldn't have accepted the position anyway if I didn't feel that the infrastructure was what it needed to be. I was really surprised when I had my first like calls with the team and with the remote staff. I was positively surprised, and that's really like got me off. Okay, I can work with that definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so the sort of infamous Kiwi kid throwing under the bus of Dignitas or whatever on the interview a couple weeks ago at the analyst desk, all the stuff that he's brought up has pretty much at this point been resolved.
Well, can
from
we
your
address
perspective.
that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
So, winning games, everybody's on your side. The more games you win, the better everybody feels about you. The more fans show up, the more people get signed, signatures, things like that.
The TSM effect.
Yeah, well, I mean, TSM. I think that Reginald is a really intelligent business owner and has other reasons why he's successful.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, though, that and sometimes we've talked about this in internal management and Dignitas a lot. Sometimes it can come down to who's winning and who's losing, simply as a matter of consistency towards who the fans are supporting and not. So it's really easy to get a lot of support and to seem like you're doing the right thing if you're winning.
Right.
Our infrastructure could have been the exact same, and if we had gone 12-0, no Reddit threads, no OD hate threads, nothing like that, right? But because we're having so that said, when you're losing, I think a really big point to get across, and Rico knows this, and I've learned it very quickly. Odie, with infinite experience in esports, knows this. When you're losing, it sucks. It sucks worse than anyone out there can imagine, because you and your team environment is degrading. You are drastically doing, and then we're doing roster swaps on top of that, like drastically trying to find this balance to get everything going. So when Alan came from that place, he came from that place from emotion that was legitimate, because he was losing games, but he didn't intend, I think, to make the organization look bad. And that's why about an hour after that, you saw him go on Reddit, get a top comment thread. And I think that's important. Like, we don't that was not requested by the organization. I had taken him aside, and the first thing he said to me was, "I don't want to get yelled at."
Yeah.
And I said, "Do you really think that I'm going to yell at you? Like that's the relationship we have? That's never going to happen." I said, "The only thing I would have to say is, why would you make me and the organization by proxy look like that when we have tried so hard to help?" That's all I said, right? And that was enough for him to realize, the organization has done a lot. We haven't been sitting idly by. There have been esports organizations that don't care. That I'm not sure how vulgar I can get, so I'm trying very hard. But they don't care. And Rico has experience. I'm sure he's seen other teams that have done this, and I really want these guys to win. I really want them to win. Rico really wants them to win. So Alan, he came from a place, because losing sucks. I understand that, but my one wish would be that the community sometimes understands, support your favorite team, support TSM because they're going 12-0 or they've won every game, whatever. But understand that the other teams, the underdogs, all of them are trying hard to get up there, and they need a little bit of love.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
But even it's great context, right? But even then, it feels as though at the time he was sort of saying, as hard as Dignitas might be trying, the infrastructure's still not what we need it to be. And so I kind of returned to the question of, since he's made that statement, right, of voicing those concerns, do you feel as though all of those issues have been solved and resolved?
No, I think it would be pretentious to say that we've just solved everything. I can't say confidently that that's true until we get the results.
Okay. So now I guess this is when Rico comes in. So Rico, really quickly, just before I ask you about sort of where you think the team needs to improve and work on that, what was the process by which you ended up coming into Dignitas, and sort of your thoughts entering the team and the organization?
Well, first of all, it was applying, of course. Let's do the thing the right way. And
you don't speak Korean.
I have basic. I will not die if I go in Korea. I can survive. I can small talk, but I will not talk geopolitics and stuff like this with you. So applying, we had a first discussion with OD, and then I had a call with Mylixia, and it clicked pretty well, and I think faster than we expected it to click. So almost right away, he told me, okay, at the end of the week, we have those meetings with the staff and everything. So you will join and see what you think about it. And just did it was actually last weekend. So, and after the weekend, they were like, okay, let's do this. And I was like, okay. Yeah.
So now you've been part of the team, and when did you land in LA?
No, 2 days ago. 2 days ago. 2 days
Okay,
ago.
so very,
Right to it, man.
very limited time, right? But I mean, I feel as though watching Dignitas' games this weekend, it looks as though things are better than they have been. So maybe to your credit.
No, it's not. There is no like Rico magic effect or whatever you want to call it. But just
I was never going to call it that.
Thank you, thank you. No, but it's what I told you earlier. It's about being able to hammer the message. So just being there and being like, okay, when the call with the coach and the remote staff is over, I can still be here. Like, okay, remember what he said, so do it. Like now, go GOQ together and work on that. And I can be watching and in the car repeating it before the game. I repeat it on stage. I repeat it, and so little by little, it will start to get in their heads, I think.
Sure. So you've entered a house that, to use an analogy, hopefully not too offensive, a house that was really great for a while, and then maybe started to, as things have happened, maybe it needs a little bit of a refurbishing, right? And so when you walk in the front door and you look at the team right now, where do you think the problems are? Are they in game, or are they with team just ability to work together, team synergy? Like where do you think the big issues are, and where are you focusing on?
It's really macro strategy right now. Like when I came in, the players clicks well together. They go to dinner. They like the atmosphere is good. I didn't feel like any like heavy atmosphere like it can happen sometimes when the teams are not doing great. They know what they have to work on. They understand it. Like they're not in denial or anything. So they have a very positive mindset in wanting to improve and listening what they've been told. They are even like proactive, like going, okay, next week, what champion do you think I should train? What should I work on? Especially Azingi. It's tough on him because he just joined the team like this under so much pressure in such a like dire time, and he has to perform. And he's very, very demanding. He asks a lot. He wants to work a lot, like even maybe too much sometimes. So we have to refrain. It's like, okay, that's not that important. Focus on something else. And so this is the kind of mindset that the players need to improve, and that's good.
There was especially towards the start of the split when things maybe looked a little darker, there was a lot of people who were like saying, well, Dignitas headed to relegation, or they might get relegated. Do you think that there's a chance of relegation at this point? Or are you like confident enough that you'll be able to, in the next couple of weeks, like make sure everything's fine?
If we take both games that we had this weekend, the great early game we had against Coast yesterday, and the great mid game that we had despite being so behind in gold against Cloud9 today, if we're able to capitalize on what we did in both those games, I'm confident we can remain in LCS for the next split, yeah.
Okay. Anything that you, in particular, you said like the micro game and that kind of thing, but are there any specific areas you can give us? Like, I mean, when you look at picks and bans, is that fine? Whenever you look at all your lanes, are they all fine? Or where do you think the improvements maybe in game need to be?
I think picks and bans should be fine from now on. I think we're ready in every game. Maybe we have like some adjustment to do in terms of champions pool, because like there are some champions that we don't play and we have to like ignore or ban, and I don't like that. So maybe we have to add like a champion or two. But overall, it's really about the macro game. Like there are some games we could have won them even if we like been outpicked or anything, just because we didn't do the proper rotation, we didn't get the proper vision. We like a lot of teams, like except if you take out the top three like CLG, Cloud9, TSM, and maybe a bit Team Liquid, most teams play with too much luck.
Right.
Like, okay, let's try this and maybe it works. No, you shouldn't play with luck. So what we are going to try and do is remove everything related with luck in the decision-making process in the game.
Nice. Now, I'm just kind of wondering, you come in, everything seems all right. Is Azingi, you mentioned that he's asking a lot of questions, that kind of thing, and we saw Cloud sort of pop in. Is Azingi permanently on the starting roster? And yeah, maybe the Mylixia question, right?
Yeah. If you want to know about the Cloud stories and that, I'll tell you that as well. Just on the Azingi question, I think for me, I've talked to a lot of team owners about this, and there's been a lot of back and forth. I used to be of the opinion, get me a really high-skilled player and bring them in, and we'll integrate them into a team, and make them strong. I now believe get me a challenger player who has the mechanics, but his skills are maybe lacking or he doesn't know enough yet, but make sure his attitude is 100% solid and he's teachable. Get that, and then I take that over the best jungler wherever. If their other attitude was hell, I would take that. Azingi is a guy, like Rico said, that is absorbing information like I have never seen. When other people are sleeping, he's watching replays. When other people are eating, he's recording conversations and listening to it. That's crazy good. That means that eventually you might have a jungler right now that's performing subpar, and then that was what the community sees. If a person like that can take the pressure and keep learning, they're going to become one of the best junglers, and Dignitas will invest in a player with that kind of attitude.
Okay.
He had a good game today. Yeah, he did.
Is Azingi a permanent part of the starting roster?
I mean, Dignitas will invest in a player of that caliber. So I cannot give you a straight answer because there's no straight answers to that. Maybe Azingi flies off and ascends and becomes a part of the League of Legends matrix. I don't know, Travis. I mean,
is it fair to say that his place on the team is maybe still more in flux than any like the other players right now?
No, I think in terms of the roster, he's about even with everybody else. To be honest with you, yeah.
All right. But because
I apologize, I can't give you more.
No, I
direct,
understand.
yeah.
I only asked because the Cloud Nguyen situation was always positioned as being a tryout, right? And so I didn't know if he was still considered like a tryout.
Yeah, okay. And that Zingi's a starter.
Okay.
Yeah, we had got him from TSM Darkness, and that. Yeah. I mean, one thing to note about this is I think you'll see this from Dignitas more. The Korean, and we've talked about this, the Korean style of replacing players very quickly if their attitudes drop and if they no longer want to win, I think is really important to bring to a team. And you don't see it in North American EU. You see a lot of stagnance in players because they tend to have high stream followings. They tend to be monetized very highly. That is something that, from an organizational standpoint, Dig has never cared about. Right? We lost Cutie Pie, massive potential monetization there, and Skara, and on and on and on. Dig is not afraid to do roster replacements. We will be at the forefront of that if we have to be.
Rico, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. It's just almost basically like the jungler position is probably the hardest to transition from solo queue to competitive play. So, we need to see like how high his skill cap is, but if it's high enough and with the attitude he has, I can work with that.
Awesome. I feel like I've gotten some really good insight from you guys as to what has been going on behind the scenes and sort of what your guys' look is going forward. But I'd also like to give you the opportunity, especially since there's been, again, so much criticism, if you'd like to directly address or say anything to any Dignitas fans or the LCS fans out there who are following your team or your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, can I talk a little bit about the Odie hate?
Yeah, sure.
Can I
it's
cover
fine.
that real
of course.
quick, and then I'll do that? Yeah. All right. There's been a lot of hate on Odie as a team leader, and I feel like Odie is a person who really puts his head down, gets stuff done, and it's like Odie's world or nobody, right? Like Odie's world or get the hell out of my way. And in that kind of attitude, it can breed a lot of like strong disagreement on another side, because whenever someone has a mission like that, there's going to be a lot of people that just don't agree with it. And agree or disagree, I think, as kind of a father figure in esports, I wanted to address this directly because there's so much hate out there for Odie that and he just like puts his head down, puts on the armor, and just kind of deals with it, and nobody speaks for the guy. He's like really been trying, and like there's a lot of this like Dignitas mousepad stuff and all that. That's like a lot of this criticism I think is unfounded. I mean, in my entire time in this organization, Odie has been overpaying people. If anything, he is too nice. If I was in his position, I would be way more brutal. Like, I have never seen him underpay a person. I've never seen him not take care of a person. I can say with absolute confidence, and it's not to my personal benefit. I'm not looking for anything out of this. I don't care. Ultimately, I have other businesses that I run, and a lot of people know that I do other stuff outside of esports. This is not my end game. So I'm not saying this because I want to get points, and that's important for the community to know. I'm saying it because I think a lot of hate is given to team owners. A lot of hate is given to managers. And from here, I'm going to transition into your statement. What would I like to say? A lot of hate is given to those people, especially if we're consistently dropping games. What I'm trying to say to the community is we are trying. We are trying to build it up. And you can be a TSM fan, you can be a CLG fan, you should be, because they're fantastic teams. But the guys at the bottom of the ladder, they're real human beings. They have personalities. They're trying to win. They've invested for the most part their entire lives in trying in this video game to make this successful. Give them a little bit of your support. Those comments on Reddit, I watch them browse them. Even though we tell them not to, they're going to end up doing it late at night. They're going to read about them. That little comment that might say, "Hey, I know you're trying." That's something that would touch someone really strongly, because there's hundreds of negative comments, guys. We can read through those and sift through those, and we can just take the bullets and put on the armor, and ultimately we're going to forget about those in a split second. But one of those little positive comments, one thing that says, "Hey, Dignitas is trying, they're making it," or, "Hey, Coast may not be doing too well, but these players want to win," something like that. Keep that in mind. You can be more. You don't have to be so one-sided. You can be fans of multiple teams. You can be fans of esports as a whole and help it grow. That's what I would say. Give power to what this is. Give power to what it represents, not just like one organization. Yeah. Support everything.
Yeah, and to follow up on that topic, I really think like this issue was raised like even last season by, I think it was Wicked and SOAS, when they also get a lot of like bad talk from the community and everything. Like, it's important that people realize that it's a chance in esports that the community can be so close to the player, can reach out to them so easily, and it's easy to be mean when you do that. But it's important that you also realize how lucky you are to be able to reach out to the players like that and be supportive to them, because it really helps.
Well, Rico and Mylixia, thank you so much for sitting down to do this interview with me. I think that the community will appreciate sort of as you said, the transparency that you're looking to give with what's going on with Dignitas. So thanks again, guys, so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
for everyone else, you can check out the rest of our coverage of all things esports at ongamers.com.